Well, my friends, welcome back to Spot On with Link Lauren, a show where we're going to break down the calamities of Hollywood, the circus of Washington, D.C., and everything in between. Did something happen over the weekend? Was there any breaking news? Did you guys see anything occur the last few days? I'm happy you are back with us. We have a jam-packed show. Of course, we're going to have to talk about the situation with Iran, President Trump's strikes. We also have to discuss this new trend in Hollywood. It seems like everybody has a transgender child, including Cynthia Nixon from Sex and the City, and her child is apparently now fasting for Palestine or doing a hunger strike for Hamas. We have a lot of topics to discuss, but this is going to be an episode where we don't talk about one person, and that person is the Duchess of the Duchess of White Castle, Meghan Markle. Okay, I told my team we're going to do an episode without Meghan Markle. I don't want to talk about her. I don't care if she pumps out another baby or does another twerking video in the hospital, a ridiculous twerking video I'm still sick thinking about. We are not doing a Meghan Markle topic in this episode, but we will be back on Wednesday with a royal expert, someone who has a ton of inside scoop and insight and know-how about Meghan, Harry, all of the royals, the monarchy. So make sure you come back on Wednesday for that. But without further ado, let's dive right in. Now, we have to start off by discussing President Trump's successful strikes on 3 nuclear facilities in Iran. Now, this is something people have been talking about for decades. Democrats and Republicans have been talking about doing this for decades and decades and decades. And President Trump finally did something about it because he's the F around and find out president. He gave the Iranians 60 days. He said, you guys, you got 2 months, come to the table, bring me your best deal. I am known for the art of the deal. President Trump loves to negotiate, but the Iranians did not want to come to the table, okay? The Ayatollah did not want to make a deal. So President Trump said, you know what? The 60 days are up, and we are going to come in and stop you from having a nuclear weapon or nuclear bomb. Now, 85% of Americans, in some polls it's 86%, but in the Harvard-Harris poll, 85% of Americans do not want Iran to have a nuclear weapon. It has bipartisan support. So President Trump, he has 85% of Americans telling him, do not let Iran have a nuclear weapon, but he has the Iranians who don't want to come to the table. They want to continue enriching themselves with uranium, and that's something we just can't have. And I'll also say this, the Iranians, they're not enriching uranium for kicks and giggles. You know what I'm saying? They're not just doing this for fun. These are people who chant death to America. They do not wish us well. They are enriching uranium to build a nuclear weapon. So everybody's saying, oh, why let them enrich uranium? No, absolutely not. So I'm happy President Trump did something about this. I'm also so happy the entire world is reminded about the might and the strength and the power of the U.S. military. These folks flew for 36 hours in B-2 bombers. They slept in shifts, they ate, they had a little bathroom, and they carried out these strikes with precision, absolute precision. There was not a single leak. None of this ever leaked. They got in, they got out. And this is what President Trump had a lot of success with in his first term with Soleimani and Baghdadi. He was able to do these very small, limited scope strikes, get in and get out missions to get rid of bad actors and bad threats to the United States of America. So for the past 2 weeks, as tensions have escalated with Iran, especially between Israel and Iran, this is what I expected President Trump to do. And I tweeted about as much. I said, you guys, he has had success with these limited, very strategic missions. I would not be shocked if this is what we see from President Trump here, and a majority of Americans are happy. Of course, there's some folks online saying, we don't want to go to war. We don't want to be embroiled in another war. I understand my generation is so weary of war. You've got Gen Z, millennials, Gen X, baby boomers, all the way up. Nobody wants to be dragged into another Middle Eastern war, but neither does President Trump. And that is not what's happening here. No American troops have stepped foot on the ground. They flew over and they flew back. Everybody made it home safe and sound. The Iranians didn't even know what hit them, literally, until our people were out of their airspace on the way home. And so President Trump was incredibly successful in this, and I could not be happier. We can't let Iran have a nuclear weapon. These are people who do not wish us well, and they chant death to America. But I understand some folks online say they don't want to be dragged into a war. That is just antithetical to what's happening. This was a mission to avoid war, right? We can't have peace without strength. And what we had the last 4 years under Joe Biden was nothing but weakness. It was Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's weakness on the world stage that even got us into this situation. If you remember, Joe Biden's the one who unfroze money, billions of dollars for the Iranians, and then the Iranians were funding Hezbollah, Hamas, and these other militant terrorist groups who do not wish us well. So that is who Joe Biden was. And Joe Biden also had no foreign policy plan besides the words "don't." If you remember, Joe Biden gave an interview to Scott Pelley on CBS on 60 Minutes back in October of 2023. And Joe Biden, when he was asked about Hezbollah and their backer Iran, all he had to say was, "Don't, don't." When Kamala Harris was asked about Iran, all she had to say was, "Don't, don't," right? This was the Democrat talking point. But as it turns out, "don't" was not a good foreign policy plan. "Don't" wasn't cutting it because the Iranians were still enriching uranium. And that is something we could not have because a majority of Americans do not want them to have a nuclear weapon. I'm glad President Trump had the balls to do something about it. But we actually have the clip of Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. Let's take a look.
What is your message to Hezbollah and its backer, Iran?
Don't. Don't.
What's the message to Iran?
Don't.
It was very important to send a very clear message to anyone who might seek to take advantage of the conflict in Gaza to threaten our personnel here or anywhere else in the region. Don't do it.
So we also had Secretary Antony Blinken right there. As you could see, that was the Democrat talking point. When they were asked about Iran, all they had to say was "don't. Don't, please don't." But President Trump came in like an alpha. Vice President J.D. Vance, Pete Hegseth, Rubio, they came in and said, if you F around, you're going to find out. And they did what Democrats have been talking about doing for decades. Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries, all these people have talked about stopping Iran from having a nuclear weapon. Nobody had the balls and the fortitude to do it. So President Trump, he took a political risk. He said, you know what, we're going to go over there. But I'm glad he did for another reason, and I'll tell you why. Because all these other countries, Russia, China, these world superpowers, they see there is nothing like the U.S. military. And thank you to everybody currently serving and everybody who has served, so I can sit here and have free speech and live in the greatest country on earth. Thank you for what you've done. But President Trump let every other country know we have the strongest, most strategic, smart, intelligent, high-powered military in the world. So if you want to F with us, be very careful. We don't want war. President Trump is the peace president. We had no war the first 4 years. We're not embroiled in a war. We got in, we got out, we did what we came to do. But everybody knows now, if you mess with us, you're going to have hell raining down on you with bunker busters. And I think the Iranians know this now. I think the Iranians are pretty defeated. They don't have much fight left in them. So if they want to come to the table, if there's anybody left to come to the table from Iran, you are welcome to come to the table. Now, this operation, one thing I loved, this operation was called Operation Midnight Hammer. Boom! Booyah, bitch. I love the name. I want to know who at the Defense Department, who at the White House is in charge of coming up with these names. Operation Midnight Hammer. I was like, wait till you see Operation Afternoon Screwdriver. Wait till you see, I want to know what the next operation is. You know what I'm saying? So I love Midnight Hammer. Midnight Hammer sounds like a guy I'd love to go out with. You know, this is Midnight Hammer, baby. So I love the operation. I'm glad we did this. I am someone who wants peace. I don't want war. I want negotiations. But when you give people months and months to come to the table and they keep calling your bluff, sometimes you got to bomb the shit out of them and let them know who the F you are and who the F the United States is as well. And that's what President Trump had to do. And I know some folks online, right? A lot of these young liberals from Columbia University and these Ivy League institutions like Harvard, they're like, why couldn't President Trump negotiate? Why couldn't he negotiate? He tried. He gave them 60 days. What do you want him to do? Go over and hang out with the Ayatollah and braid each other's hair and sing Kumbaya? I don't know who y'all think we're dealing with here, but President Trump said, you know what? We're going in. We're dropping some bunker busters, and the boys are on their way home safe and sound. And they are back at Whiteman Air Force Base in Knob Noster, Missouri. And it was a 36-hour flight. As I said, they slept in shifts. And President Trump as well, we found a tweet from 2011. President Trump, since 2011, actually for decades, he's been talking about Iran and how they cannot have a nuclear weapon. So this was posted at 11:34 a.m. on November 4th, 2011. He said, Iran's quest for nuclear weapons is a major threat to our nation's national security interest. We can't allow Iran to go nuclear. So President Trump tells everybody who he is, what he is thinking. This is not someone with secrecy like Barack Obama and Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton. This is someone who has told us for decades now, decades and decades, what he intends to do. It's sort of like the mass deportations, right? He ran on mass deportations, spoke about mass deportations for years at every single rally. He gets into office and everyone goes, what is he doing, mass deportations? Whoever told us he was going to do? That is what he ran on, okay? He has talked about tariffs for decades. So when President Trump gets into office and he wants to discuss tariffs, that is what he is going to do. So thank you, President Trump. And he actually has bipartisan support. Even MSNBC and CNN were going, damn, that was a good mission. No leaks, carried out flawlessly, executed exactly what they came to do. Yes. That is the United States military. We don't want to go to war. We don't plan on going to war. But if we have to come in and remind you who the hell we are as the United States of America, that is what we are going to do. Now, someone else who chimed in on the situation in Iran was none other than Ariana Grande, who plays Glinda in the movie Wicked. Now, Ariana Grande is apparently calling for Trump's impeachment because Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, AOC, as she is known, not so fondly, she is also calling for President Trump's impeachment, even though the Democrats have spoken for decades about getting rid of Iran's nuclear program and no one had the balls to do it. But I find it funny that all these celebrities like Ariana Grande are calling for President Trump's impeachment when y'all can't even find Iran on a map. So Ariana Grande, calm down, have an almond, have a piece of bread, relax, you know what I'm saying? Eat something, come back to reality, come back to earth, because President Trump, what he did is not impeachable, okay? Barack Obama dropped how many bombs on people? He was like the drone king, Barack Obama. The same way Barack Obama was the deporter in chief and deported millions of people. No one had a problem with that because he had a D next to his name. You understand what I'm saying? Because he's a Democrat, he gets a pass, but President Trump comes in and actually does what we've been talking about for decades, and they're calling for his impeachment. But this is nothing new. They've been calling for President Trump's impeachment since before he took office, since before his inauguration in January of 2017. After he won in 2016, they've been calling for his impeachment, and that's what they do because they have nothing else. I mean, remember Representative Al Green was calling for his impeachment, I think, President Trump's second day in office? So Ariana Grande, we wish you well. Maybe stick to singing, dancing, and acting. You're not really that great at acting, but I hear the movie Wicked did well. I still have not seen it yet. But calling for President Trump's impeachment, you're clearly not someone who is in Mensa. But we have to move on to some more topics. Now, as I say often, these Democrat elites hate you. They hate me. They hate the forgotten men and women of this country. If you are an average working class American, these elite Democrats like Gavin Newsom, Kamala Harris, Hillary Clinton, Chuck Schumer, all of them, they sit around laughing at you. They are laughing at us. And that is who Gavin Newsom is as well. Gavin Newsom is a rules for thee, not for me kind of guy. This is someone who shut down his state and then went out to French Laundry, a Michelin star restaurant, to sip wine and have whatever the hell they serve, because I've never been there. I probably can't get a reservation. I can't get a reservation at French Laundry. Call me. But no, Gavin Newsom shut down his state, and then he goes and gets photographed at a fancy, highfalutin dinner. This is like all these Democrat elites who wanted to shut down the country, and then they were all gathering in private and having rooftop parties at their penthouse apartments. That is who they are. It's like when we did the No Kings protest, the Democrats were out there going, we don't want kings. We don't want billionaires. Nana, nana, boo, boo. Well, guess what? Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, George Soros, everybody was in the Hamptons at this Soros wedding in Watermill, New York, where they're eating crumpets and scones and laughing at all of us because these elite Democrats hate you. They hate me. They hate anybody who is not part of their exclusive club. And Gavin Newsom, as his state was burning, as people were rioting, overtaking freeways, burning cars, waving Mexican flags in the street, he was at a Napa Valley fundraiser, sipping wine in a V-neck t-shirt. And we have a picture we'll put up on the screen. If you're listening, if you're streaming, come over to YouTube so you can see what the hell we're looking at. But Gavin Newsom has the audacity, as people are rioting and as President Trump is calling in the National Guard, to go sip wine at a Napa Valley fundraiser. And this is akin to the whole French Laundry incident where he shut down his state and goes out to a Michelin star restaurant. And this is who Gavin Newsom is, right? He wants all of you to play by the rules, or he wants all of you to suffer, while in private, he mingles with wealthy millionaires and billionaires. That is who slimy, greasy Gavin Newsom is. That is exactly the character of the man. In fact, this man has no character. So we did some research. We have information about this fundraiser. So this was dubbed Vineyard Vibes. Well, you know who's not feeling a vibe? The people whose neighborhoods are being taken over by illegal migrants and whose cars are being bombed. But nonetheless, he's at Vineyard Vibes, which is held at Odette Estate Winery, who gives a shit, in Napa Valley. They're apparently raising money for some Plump Jack Foundation founded by Newsom's sister. I don't care. I don't care if this is some fundraiser. Of course, his office said it was a fundraiser. He had to go. The optics are terrible, and he knows he's not going to really reap consequences because he is part of the Democrat elite. He can go out and sip wine at a fundraiser as his state is all over the news with illegal migrants, crime, people overtaking freeways, rioting in the streets. He knows if he goes out, his own people are going to think it's hunky-dory and everything's fine because it's the rules for thee, not for me. So he stayed about 90 minutes, and if they're saying 90 minutes, you know it's probably way more. And apparently this is an everyday occurrence for him. He loves to sip wine. He's very into fancy meals. This is who Gavin Newsom is. Now, a spokesperson for the governor's office said he proudly attended the fundraiser to raise money for cancer in honor of his mother, yada, yada, yada. I call BS. I call absolute BS. I'm not denying that his mother passed away from cancer. I am so sorry. That is horrific. I'm sorry your mom is not here to see you be a terrible governor of California. But you know the optics. You know, because you played this stupid game before. If you go out and sip wine as people in your state are begging you for help, it looks like you don't care. It's like a let them eat cake, Marie Antoinette kind of moment, but that's who Gavin Newsom is. Rules for thee, not for me. And the folks in California, they're also upset. Gavin Newsom is running a deficit in California of tens of billions of dollars. Gavin Newsom loves to tout the economy of California. He says, we have the greatest economy. We're one of the largest economies in the United States, one of the largest economies on earth. California is such a big state. Well, you're building bridges to nowhere and you're running a deficit of tens of billions of dollars. So don't come telling us you have this incredible economy. The folks who are the backbone of the economy in California are the ones who don't like you and feel left behind. They're the farmers, the working class Americans, the men and women who actually build up California. They don't want to see you at a wine fundraiser. They don't want to see you sipping fancy, Merlot. Exactly. So Gavin Newsom, we wish you well, but this is pretty disgusting. Now, Gavin Newsom, someone else I think he needs to go back to the drawing board and reassess his relationship with is none other than his wife, Jennifer Sybil Newsom. So Gavin Newsom did a post wishing his wife happy birthday. Now, he did not call her his wife, Jennifer Sybil Newsom. I actually feel sorry for the woman. It takes a lot for me to feel sorry for these California liberals who hate us and sit around in their mansions eating crumpets and scones. But nonetheless, Gavin Newsom did a post where he said, happy birthday to the first partner of California, the outstanding mother of our 4 incredible children and the love of my life. I hope your day is as remarkable as the work that you've done for California women and kids. It's an honor to witness firsthand the amount of care, strength, and compassion you demonstrate every single day. Happy birthday, Jen. Now, everyone online was saying, what the hell? First partner. I'm gay, and I don't even want to be called a partner. You know what I'm saying? I'm not playing pickleball. You understand? Unless there's a ring on my finger and I'm a husband, I'm a boyfriend. I hate the word partner. It sounds like Brokeback Mountain. It's like, howdy, partner. You coming down to the old Roundup Saloon? I don't know why he's calling his wife first partner. I mean, she's given this man 4 kids and she hasn't graduated to wife. He can't call Jennifer Sybil his wife. I don't know. It seems weird to me. It also seems a little gay. I don't know. Calling your wife, who you have 4 children with, instead of calling her the first lady of California, you call her the first partner, and then he's called her the first spouse. Is she transgender? Is she non-binary, Jennifer? If Jennifer Sybil Newsom is non-binary, please call in and tell us. But I thought this was such a slap in the face, because as a gay man, I don't even want to be called partner. I will in a pinch. We can use the term because it is what it is. But nonetheless, I don't know why Gavin Newsom is calling his wife partner, spouse. Call her a wife, okay? Call her a wife. If you really love her, if she's the love of your life and she cares for your state and she's given you 4 children, maybe she can graduate at some point to being called a wife. And for all the women out there, drop a comment right in and tell me what you would think if your husband posted, happy birthday to my partner, and you've given this man for children, but it's because Gavin Newsom is a greasy slime ball that he does things like this, or he had one of his little gay interns. This is actually my new theory. Okay, maybe Gavin Newsom, because as I've told you before, Gavin Newsom's team is run by a bunch of nasty little bitchy gay queens. Maybe these little bitchy gay queens, he said, you know what, go do a post. It's my wife's birthday, go do a post for her. They do a post, and because they're all a bunch of homosexuals, they put first partner. Maybe that's what they did. Maybe the gay interns running Gavin Newsom's account are the ones who actually did the post. As someone who's worked on a campaign, I've done, a Valentine's Day post and things like that. I said, send me the pictures, we can workshop it, but I don't understand calling your wife first partner. So another thing that's in the news regarding Gavin Newsom, his wife posted a bizarre cringe video. I don't know if she's in dire need of, a pick-me-up, of some SSRIs, if she's depressed. Maybe she's crying over the fact that her husband won't even call her a wife and is calling her a partner. But Jennifer Sybil Newsom posted a video where she's crying over the deportations in California. Let's take a look and then discuss.
We are a country of immigrants. That is just a fact. It is who we are. And yet here we are watching families be targeted, watched, hunted, farm workers being chased across fields. These are some of the hardest working people on earth, and they literally feed the nation. Shame on this federal administration for doing this. Shame on them for choosing cruelty, for terrifying families, ruining children's lives just to make a political point. Whose interpretation of Christian values is this? What happened to being the party of family values? This shouldn't be about politics. This should be about people, their well-being, our shared humanity. If you could see these families, hear from them, these moms, their children. Today I heard from community members who have lost loved ones to suicide because of the trauma and pain being inflicted on the immigrant community. If you looked into their eyes, you would understand, you would feel it. You would know this was wrong. We have to do better.
Sweetheart, please go to therapy so we don't have to deal with you crying into your phone on the internet. It felt very performative, okay? It felt very Gavin Newsom-esque. She's going, shut up, shut the hell up. Who holds their phone up and starts crying? They're being ripped from their... No, they're not. Literally, we are targeting criminals like Kilmar Abrego Garcia and people who are members of MS-13 and Tren de Aragua. You know what I'm saying? And if Biden had done his job and not let millions of folks into the country, Trump wouldn't have to be doing the mass deportations, but it's because you let millions and millions of people into your state. You know what I'm saying? So Jennifer Sybil Newsom, she does this video where she's crying over family values. She's crying and saying, family values, what happened to Christian family values? Well, you know what happened to family values? What about the fact that Gavin Newsom, your husband, is fighting to keep men and women's sports? That is not family value. What about the fact that your husband doesn't want to put his foot down on the transing of children and the castrating and the chemical mutilation of children in his own state? He doesn't want to put his foot down on that? And you're talking to us about Christian family values? What about shutting down the state and going out to French Laundry, a Michelin star restaurant, and laughing at people who have lost their jobs and have to sit inside because you told them to stay at home and they couldn't gather and they were depressed? You want to talk about people taking their lives, Jennifer Sybil Newsom? Shut the hell up. There are people who killed themselves during COVID because your husband shut down the state and said they couldn't gather with their loved ones or get sunlight, fresh air, vitamin D. I know people personally who took their own lives during COVID because they were lonely and told to stay inside by the federal government, by the state government, and that is what they did, and they're no longer with us. So you can shut the hell up, Jennifer Sybil Newsom. I'm so sick of you. I am so sick of you. I think you're a match made in heaven. You and Gavin Newsom are a match made in heaven because you're both disgusting liars. You want to get on camera and talk about family values when your husband wants to erase women, half the country, half the planet Earth? Your husband wants to put men and women's sports in their locker rooms so they can get the shit beat out of them, and you want to talk about Christian family values? F you. F you, Jennifer Sybil Newsom, and we wish you well. And it's no surprise that you're crying on camera and having a manic meltdown because you have to go home and sleep with Gavin Newsom. Although I don't think there's a lot of sleeping happening between you, because if we remember, Gavin Newsom is a man who slept with his campaign manager's wife publicly and proudly and never even tried to deny it. This is a man who lied about going to rehab and then about 11 years after the fact said, well, I cleaned my life up. Clearly, he hasn't stopped drinking because he's at a fundraiser in Napa Valley while his state is burning to the ground. That is who Gavin Newsom is. His own fire hydrants didn't have water. That is the character of the man. And Jennifer Sybil Newsom, the wife, if you love this man, then I judge you as well. I think you're probably a disgusting person, but don't come on here talking your nonsense about Christian family values when you are trying to erase women and get women beat up on the volleyball court, track meets, etc. Okay, if you can't defend women's sports and women's spaces, don't talk to us about Christian family values. If you support the transing of children, don't talk to us about Christian family values. Shut the hell up and go back to the drawing board. And what's not Christian family values is allowing folks to come in who hate the fabric of our nation and burn down buildings and cars and overtake freeways. What does that say to the actual taxpayers in California who would love for leadership to step in so they can actually go to work? There are folks who could not get to work because the freeways were overtaken, because the roads were being blocked. And where was your husband? At a Napa Valley fundraiser. F you, Jennifer Sybil Newsom. But we have to move on. We have to move on to some more fun topics, so stay tuned. This episode is brought to you by Masa Chips. Did you know that chips and fries used to be cooked in tallow up until the 1990s when big corporations switched to cheap, processed seed oils? But today, seed oils make up 20% of the average American's daily calories, and recent studies have linked seed oils to metabolic health issues and inflammation in the body. Masa decided to do something about it. They created a tasty and delicious tortilla chip with just 3 ingredients and no seed oils, just organic corn, sea salt, and 100% grass-fed beef tallow. These chips don't only avoid all the bad stuff, they taste incredible too. Masa is crunchier, tastier, and sturdier than other chips. They don't break in your guacamole. Snacking on Masa chips is nothing like eating regular chips. With Masa, you feel satisfied, light, and energetic with no crash, bloat, or gross sluggish feeling afterwards. And an added bonus, the beef tallow makes the chips much more satiating, so you won't find yourself uncontrollably binging and still feeling hungry afterwards. Masa Chips is beloved by tens of thousands of customers and has been endorsed by industry-leading health and nutrition experts like Ben Greenfield and Gary Brecka. Ready to give Masa a try? Go to masachips.com/link and use code LINK for 25% off your first order. That's masachips.com/link, code LINK for 25% off your first order. Now, speaking of couples who hate each other and clearly need to be in therapy, we have to talk about none other than Michelle Obama. We discussed her before. Michelle Obama's hatred for her husband needs to be studied by science. Someone could do a whole semester psychiatric evaluation of Michelle Obama's hatred for her husband. And look, I'm not a fan of Barack Obama by any means, okay? The high-waisted jeans, the, smug attitude, the fact that he was a terrible president, he did nothing to help his own people. No black people think he was a great president for them. I'm not a big fan of Barack Obama, clearly, okay? Anybody who knows me by now knows this. But I don't think a man should have his wife going on every podcast and show denigrating him and emasculating him, especially after he gave her the freaking White House. Could you imagine this man gives Michelle Obama, she becomes the first lady of the United States. She gets to live in the White House, fly on private jets, fly on Air Force One, has almost everything handed to her. And she turns around and talks about how she can't stand the man. She hated being first lady. She hated doing everything. She doesn't want to go home to him. She doesn't even want to be called Mrs. Obama anymore, which we'll get to in a second. But that is who Michelle Obama is. And we actually have a clip of her on a podcast discussing how she's glad she never had a son because he would have been a mini Barack. Let's take a look.
You should have threw a boy in the mix. I would. I'm so glad I didn't have a boy.
Yeah.
Because he would have been a Barack Obama.
It's like baby Barack. It would have been amazing.
No, I would have felt for him.
So Michelle Obama, she doesn't want to have a mini Barack. So basically the Obama name might be done with, right? Because she only has daughters. She has no sons. And then her own daughters apparently have dropped their last names too. Apparently Malia Obama doesn't even want to go by Malia Obama anymore. So once and for all, time and time again, they keep shanking Barack. So I don't feel too sorry for Barack Obama on almost anything, but having your wife and your kids go around and denigrate you on a daily basis has to be emasculating. And it's probably why we see these rumors of him dating Jennifer Aniston or going out on the town or who knows what he's doing. For a moment, I thought Barack Obama might play for my team. Who knows? But Barack Obama and Michelle Obama, clearly something is rotten in Denmark. And when your husband goes out paddleboarding with the hot chef and the hot chef doesn't come back, something might be dicey over in Martha's Vineyard in the big old mansion, But Michelle Obama, this is what she does. She sits around in her massive mansion in Martha's Vineyard and she complains about being first lady. And now now she has said she's glad she didn't have a son because he would have been a mini Barack. Now, Michelle Obama, she is on vacation right now without Barack. I think she might be in the south of France. She might be over in Europe, someplace fabulous, because she's making hundreds of millions of dollars from Netflix and her book deals because she's Michelle Obama. You know, being first lady was so hard for her, but she had no problem cashing those checks the second she left office in 2016. So Michelle Obama, she's over in Europe without her husband. Her kids, they don't want to use the Obama last name. She also said she doesn't even want to be called Mrs. Obama. And she says this is because she wants people to feel comfortable. No. If you're going around complaining about your husband, saying you're glad you don't have a son because he would have been a mini Barack, you're saying you don't want to use your last name, Mrs. Obama, something is awry. I don't know. Where there's smoke, there's fire. Something is not okay. But she knows. As much as Michelle Obama wants to denigrate her husband, she has nothing without him. I don't care what y'all want to say. We used to love Michelle Obama. She had high favorability. Everybody thought, oh, she could even run for president herself. She is famous because of who she married. Michelle Obama has hundreds of millions of dollars now because she married a man who went on to become president of the United States. This is not someone who has huge hallmark accomplishments on their own. In fact, she didn't do that much as first lady. She didn't really make any positive change. She didn't address the Black maternal health crisis or issues in her own community, which is what Black folks were hoping for when they saw Barack Obama and Michelle Obama walk into the White House January of 2009. So Michelle Obama, she doesn't want to use her last name. She doesn't want to have a son. I think something is awry, but she's not going to divorce this man because she enjoys being a part of the Democrat elite. And that is who Michelle Obama is. Now we have to talk about Cynthia Nixon from Sex and the City. You might know her as Miranda Hobbs. She's the redhead. She used to be straight in the 90s. She dated Steve. We all love Steve on the original Sex and the City. And then she started dating this non-binary character named Che Diaz. Now she's a lesbian. She can't figure out her identity, who she is. She basically left her entire family behind to go be a late in life lesbian. So good for you, Miranda Hobbs on Sex and the City. But apparently Cynthia Nixon is just as woke and ridiculous in real life. So she is walking the walk and talking the talk. She's a method actor. She is a method actor. So she's a woke, ridiculous person on stage, and she's also woke and ridiculous off stage. So Cynthia Nixon's child, named Seth Moses, who is an observant Jewish person, has decided to do a hunger strike for Palestine. This person is fasting for Hamas, for Gaza, for Palestine. This is part of Jewish Voices for Peace. And this person is also a self-proclaimed Jewish anti-Zionist. So Cynthia Nixon's child also used to be a girl and now identifies as a boy. So Cynthia Nixon, you did a great job as a parent. Your child is transgender, can't figure out who they are, what identity they want to be. Now they're fasting for Gaza, Palestine, and Hamas. Good for you, sweetheart. You did a great job raising your child. I am so sick of all of this fasting for Hamas, fasting for Palestine. I remember this about 18 months ago. This was really going on at Princeton and Harvard and all these higher education universities. And then we found out the kids were going to Chick-fil-A. They were like fasting in shifts. They were doing rotating hunger strikes, which isn't really how a hunger strike works. You guys aren't, the next Mahatma Gandhi. Normally, when you do a hunger strike, you actually do the hunger portion of the strike. You don't do a hunger strike for 4 hours, and then you go get lunch. You go get lunch at Sarah Beth's, and then you come back and you do a little bit more of a hunger strike. That is not how it works. But Cynthia Nixon's child apparently feels compelled to do this because I think a lot of young people are devoid of purpose in your life. They don't have family values. They don't have a lot of hobbies. They don't know what their passion is. And so a lot of young people we're seeing, they're tying themselves to these social movements, whether it's Ukraine, Zelensky, Palestine, Hamas, Gaza. They're tying themselves to the transgender cult. That is what a lot of young people are doing. They can't figure out what they want to do in life, so they start messing around with their identity. Well, I might be born in the wrong body. Well, I actually might hate my own country. Well, I might go join this hunger strike. Instead of actually going and getting a job and building a career and building a family, they tie themselves to these social movements, and it changes every 6 months. So good for you, Cynthia Nixon. But we also have to talk about this trend in Hollywood where we have so many celebrities with transgender children. We've all seen it on social media. It seems like everybody these days has a trans kid in Hollywood. You've got Cynthia Nixon, you've got Cher, Jennifer Lopez, Charlize Theron, Dwayne Wade and Gabrielle Union. You've got Robert De Niro, Heather Dubrow, who's a reality star, Jamie Lee Curtis, Naomi Watts, Annette Bening, and Warren Beatty have a son, Steven, who came out as trans in 2012, Sigourney Weaver, and actress Busy Phillips. So everybody in Hollywood now has a transgender child. I don't know what's going on in Hollywood. Maybe it's the water. Maybe it's the fact that they push trans ideology and gender ideology onto all of these kids, especially through social media. But we have to discuss this phenomenon because it is statistically impossible that this many people in such a small area have trans or non-binary kids who want to mess with their identities and can't figure out who they are. And when it comes to Dwayne Wade's son becoming a girl, what happened to Black Lives Matter? If Black lives really mattered, would you allow your son to chemically castrate himself or to change his gender so he can never reproduce again? Is that Black Lives Matter? No, you guys are a bunch of hypocrites. And it's because in Hollywood, they don't place an emphasis on family, faith, the nuclear family, or having anything in your life that really gives you meaning. So they glom onto these things like gender ideology, trans ideology. But in Hollywood, it's become the new trend to have a transgender child. It's like getting an Hermes Birkin bag. You know, people used to wait in line. They were expensive. It's the new hot trend to have a transgender child. If you don't have a trans kid in Hollywood, oh my God, you can't come to the cocktail parties. You aren't really cool and down with the get down unless you have a trans or non-binary child. I actually think a non-binary kid might be one step above trans. It's like high-waisted jeans, bell-bottom pants. It's like, you know, highlights in your hair. It's a new trend in Hollywood. Everybody has to have a transgender child. But I would respect these celebrities more if when their young children came to them at 8, 9, 12, you name it, and said, I feel like I was born in the wrong body. If the parents said, you know what? Interesting. Let's go see someone and talk about that. Let's wait and see and watch until you're 18 years old and can make an adult decision for yourself. I still think 18 is a little too young, but let's wait and see. But all of these celebrities, because they want to seem like they're woke and accepting and they're all in support of LGBTQIA+, XYZ, R2D2, they want to be allies. Everybody wants to be an ally, so they won't put the foot down on their children. Okay, if you were real parents, you wouldn't let your young kids be injected with hormones and puberty blockers that are going to make them sterile for the rest of their lives. You understand what I'm saying? That is when I would respect you more. But all of these folks in Hollywood have transgender children. And it's very interesting that such a concentration in one area all happen to have trans kids. It's almost like Hollywood is pushing trans ideology onto young people. And I was thinking this morning, before we came up here to film this episode, when you look at a lot of movies in Hollywood now, the families are a mess. There are no movies or shows in Hollywood where you have family values, where the family gets together at the end of the night and has dinner, where the father is in the home. Look at how many Disney movies. Disney, who owns ABC, who owns The View, who is very, very liberal. How many Disney movies do we see where the father is gone or the mother is gone, where you don't have two parents in the household? And we know from statistic research, when you grow up with two parents in the household, you are much less likely to commit crimes, to have mental health issues. These are facts. You understand what I'm saying? And so when you look at all these films and TV shows coming out of Hollywood, the kids are on drugs, the kids are strung out, they're messing with their identity, they're saying they're non-binary, they're chopping their hair off, they're getting mastectomies at 16, 17 years old. That is what's happening in these movies and TV shows in Hollywood. And then you can't really scratch your head and say, well, why are all these kids questioning their own identities? Why are all these kids feeling like, oh, I might be born in the wrong body? I truly believe if young people whose brains weren't sponges weren't constantly inundated now with trans ideology and all of this on social media, I don't think they would ever second guess themselves. When I was growing up and I knew that I was gay, it's not because I had gay stuff shoved in front of me on every single TV show. There were very few TV shows with anybody who was gay, especially a good representation of a gay character. There wasn't a ton of social media. We didn't have TikTok. We didn't have Instagram. It's just sort of coming about. But Facebook, there was nothing to really find that made you feel affirmed in the fact that you were gay. I just knew I was gay. Now, if you're a gay dude like me, if you're a normal gay, you're considered boring. You're considered a normie. You're not part of that club. You got to be like a non-binary, pansexual, polysexual cyborg to be interesting nowadays. And I talk about this often with some of my gay friends. If you are just a normal gay guy, they see you as a threat. Oh, you cannot be part of that group, and I don't want to be a part of the group anyway. I don't want to be a part of anyone's little community. I'm a grown-ass man and an adult, and I have a lot going on in my life, okay? I don't need to be a part of any little small community. But these folks in Hollywood, they think it's okay to trans their children, to push gender ideology onto their children, to inject them with hormones and puberty blockers, and I would respect more folks in Hollywood if they spoke up. And I know there are folks in Hollywood who agree with me, but they're too scared to come out and say it because they don't want to lose roles. They don't want to lose jobs. They don't want to seem, anti-LGBTQ. It is not anti-trans or anti-LGBTQ to say you don't want kids to be shot up with hormones or that you don't want men and women's sports. But this is what they do to try and silence you. If you speak up and say, I don't want men and women's sports, I don't want kids shot up with hormones, they say you're transphobic, you're bigoted, you're xenophobic. This is what they do to try to shut down the conversation. It's not going to work for me. It's not going to work for me. I am impervious to all of those attacks and attempts. So, Busy Phillips, Sigourney Weaver, Naomi Watts, Cynthia Nixon, Dwayne Wade, we wish you well with all of your trans kids. Your kids are the actual victims in the situation. If you think about it, the young kids who are coming to them at 12, 13, 14 and saying they're trans and they're being medically transitioned by these ridiculous liberal socialist doctors, the kids are the victims. The kids are the ones I actually think need help and need to be taken away from these parents. I think sort of the opposite of the Tim Walz model. In Minnesota, Governor Tim Walz believes if you don't affirm your kid's gender and allow them to transition, they can be taken from you and become children of the state. I think the opposite. I think if a parent is shooting their kid up with hormones and transitioning them, that kid should probably be taken from the home because you are not a real parent if you're allowing your kid to be dismembered or disfigured or impacted permanently for the rest of their lives by medical procedures and interventions. I think that's very, very, very bizarre, but there's a whole medical lobby pushing for all of this. It's being pushed through entertainment in Hollywood. A lot of these people are a party to it. Let me tell you a story about a guy named Leo Grillo. While on a road trip, Leo came across a Doberman. This dog was severely underweight and clearly in trouble. Leo rescued that Doberman and named him Delta. Sadly, Delta was just one of many animals that needed help, which inspired Leo to start Delta Rescue, the largest no-kill, care-for-life animal sanctuary in the world. They've rescued thousands of dogs, cats, and horses from the wilderness, and they provide their animals with shelter, love, safety, and a home. This dedication and everlasting love to animals is Leo's mission and legacy. Delta Rescue relies solely on contributions from people like us. And if you want caring for these animals to be part of your legacy, speak with your estate planner because they're tax-saving estate planning benefits too. You can grow your estate while letting your love for animals live well into the future. Check out the estate planning tab on their website to learn more and speak with an advisor. We call a dog man's best friend for a reason. You can help those who need it most. So please visit deltarescue.org today to learn more. That's deltarescue.org. Now, speaking of Hollywood, Hollywood has no original ideas. As we saw with Rachel Zegler and Snow White, they just want to keep regurgitating and recycling the same old stuff. And each time, it gets worse. Can y'all not go back to the drawing board? Y'all are paid millions and billions of dollars and you can't come up with new intellectual property. There's no new IP in Hollywood that's interesting. They just keep going back and recycling the same old stories. And Ryan Murphy, the creator of Glee, I believe he created Nip Tuck, American Horror Story, American Crime Story. He has no original ideas either. He keeps going back and he wants to do Menendez. He wants to do Johnny Versace. Well, Ryan Murphy has now decided he is going to do the JFK Jr. and Carolyn Bessette love story from the 90s. Now, Carolyn Bessette was the quintessential cool girl. Carolyn Bessette was known for working at Calvin Klein, being effortless, having chic style. Girls to this day are recreating Carolyn Bessette's outfits. She had this effortless cool factor that just can't be taught, can't be recreated. JFK Jr. was one of the most eligible bachelors. He had thick hair. He was from the Kennedy dynasty. He was a little bit rogue. He was a great guy as long as you didn't get into a plane with him. That was JFK Jr. and Carolyn Bessette. They had this whirlwind romance that people followed for years and years and years. They were an iconic it couple, not just in New York City, but across the United States of America. Well, Ryan Murphy has decided he is going to do American Love Story, JFK Jr. and Carolyn. Now, Ryan Murphy actually released stills and videos of what these actors are going to look like playing JFK Jr. and Carolyn Bessette. And let me just tell you, it's like the Alibaba, Temu, Wish knockoff version of JFK Jr. and Carolyn. It's like when you order it online, first when it arrives in the mail. I'm here to tell you, she's standing in this weird trench coat with this bag. She does not resemble Carolyn Bessette to me. This guy does not have the same swagger as JFK Jr., as John F. Kennedy Jr. Jr., but Ryan Murphy, of course, he wants to make some money. He doesn't have any original ideas anymore, so he's going back. Now, the family has not been consulted whatsoever, which I think is very weird, but I also understand because the Kennedys have to be tired of folks coming in and recreating their life story. And I also have to say, Mad Men was a show that was all about the 60s and advertising, and that's why they were called Mad Men. And even Mad Men, some critics said, you know, you're rewriting and going back and doing a period piece on something that wasn't that long ago. You're doing a period piece on the 60s. And now Ryan Murphy is going to do a period piece on this 90s whirlwind romance between JFK Jr. and Carolyn Bessette. Can't we just let some more time pass? Can't you give the Kennedys a week off from having films made about them? And I understand you don't have to love the Kennedys. You can love them. You can hate them. I don't really care. But can this family have a moment where someone's not doing a film, a TV show, a documentary, or posting about them or regurgitating their life story in their own version and in their own way? But here's what Ryan Murphy actually had to say. He said, I'm thrilled to introduce to you Sarah Pidgeon as Carolyn and Paul Kelly as John F. Kennedy Jr. Over 1,000 actors auditioned for each of these roles, and we absolutely found the perfect choices. American Love Story premieres Valentine's Day in 2026. I'm here to tell you, you can audition thousands of people. You can't recreate JFK Jr. and Carolyn Bessette. You just can't do it. And why not let these folks rest in peace? Can we not let anybody rest in peace anymore? You have to recreate their love story time and time and time again. And I also have to say this. The guy playing JFK Jr. just doesn't have the same it factor. You know what I'm saying? There's some type of swagger. I mean, it was his voice. It was his sort of cool, suave thing he had going. You can't recreate it. I don't care how many Lee Strasberg acting classes you take. If you're a method actor, you can't recreate that. And with Carolyn Bessette, I feel for her family too. Can't you let the woman rest in peace? She died tragically in the 90s, and you can't let her just have this moment. Her family has to have a whole TV show of Ryan Murphy with some weird, bizarre actress playing her who looks like a knockoff version. You know what I'm saying? I'm the type of person, I'll go get some clothes at Target, H&M. I'm not really that into fashion. But Carolyn Bessette was a fashion girl. You know what I'm saying? So you can't have the H&M version of Carolyn Bessette and think that it's going to fly. Everybody in fashion is looking at this and going, oh, Ryan Murphy, you missed the boat. You missed the boat and you missed the mark on this one. You might want to go back to the drawing board. So in conclusion, will I be watching the show? I might. I might watch it in 2026. 2026 feels like a long time from now. If we're still here in 2026, I will, of course, watch. But I think Hollywood needs to really sit and assess and have some self-reflection, because why can't you guys come up with any original ideas? How come you're constantly regurgitating someone else's life story? You're regurgitating an old Disney film, regurgitating an old movie. Ryan Murphy, come up with some interesting intellectual property and some stories of your own, because this JFK Jr. and Carolyn, they're not cutting it. You know what I'm saying? And no matter how you feel about the Kennedys, if you love them, if you dislike them, if you're indifferent, can they not have a moment to not have something made off of their families? Everybody is making money off of their family for decades and decades and decades. Can't you just let JFK Jr. and Carolyn Bessette rest in peace? As for you guys, we will not be resting in peace. We will be back on Wednesday with much more Spot On with Link Lauren. We'll have more hot topics. Who knows what's going to happen in the next 48 hours? But I want to hear from you on social media. Drop a comment on YouTube, tweet me, Instagram me, TikTok me. I don't care. Send me a smoke signal. Write to me and tell me what you think about Michelle Obama and the fact that she hates her husband. Cynthia Nixon's trans kid is fasting for Palestine or doing a hunger strike for Hamas. Who cares? Write to me and tell me what you think about this JFK Jr. remake. Does it look legit to you? Is it something you're interested in watching? All in all, I will see you guys on the next one. So be safe, make good choices. Bye.